say that. Done?
Recording in progress.
Okay, say that. All right. So, Chodesh, everybody. Tonight's Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So, Be'ez Hashem, we'll talk a little bit. What is the month of Shvat? What is the month that we're entering into? And relate this in terms of a person's avodah, person's spiritual work in this world. So Shvat, the Aris tells us that Shvat is connected to the letters of Hey, Yud, Vav, Hey. Hama Yimirena V'Hayehu Torah Kodesh has to do with a verse that talks about the transformation and the extension of holiness, of the sanctity of Kedusha, that extends even to the world of translation. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu begins to translate the Torah on the month of Shvat, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, for the 36 days until Zayin Adar, which 36 corresponds to the 36 tractates of the Gemara, of Talmud. So this is the idea of Shvat, but there's other elements of Shvat which we'll try to connect to, which is that, for example, Shvat, the month of Shvat, is connected to the tribe, to the Shevet of Asher. And Asher is spiritually connected to the world of Tainum, the world of pleasure. Asher Shemein Lachmai, that Asher is connected to the world of Tainum. So to understand what is it about Shvat connected to the world of Tainum, the world of pleasure, spiritual delight. Also, according to the Sefer Yetzirah, Shvat is connected to the ita, to the sense, that is the sense of tasting, particularly the idea of tasting food, but taste in general. And it's also connected to the letter tzadi, or tzadik, the way it's called. And that's the letter that's connected to this month. This letter, tzaddik, is generally a letter that is connected to all of Klal Yisrael. As the Ravid speaks over there in Sefer Yetzirah, brings down that the month that Klal Yisrael in general is connected to the letter tzaddik, and one of the qualities of the month is connected also to the sign of the month is connected to Dli. Dli is Aquarius, or a pitcher. And this also that's brought down from many tzaddikim. It's already brought down in the Even Ezra, brought down from Paigon. The Bnei Sasra brings it down, that this quality of Dli, which is Doilo Mashka, which means that it's drawing forth and giving out, it's drawing from above and giving below, which means expanding, is particularly also connected to Klal Yisrael. It's the sign of Klal Yisrael. It's the mazel of Klal Yisrael. So what is all these ideas of Asher and the Ita and Tzaddik, the stomach, taste and pleasure and the letter tzaddik, what are they, and the idea of Adli, what are they all, how are they interconnected? To understand what this is, some type of deeper connection to this. So in Shvat also the name Shvat is related to the word like shevet, like a rod. And therefore, not because of this, but the Medrash says that we're learning this week's parashas, we're talking about the makas, that the 10 makas, the 10 plagues. And although the word makkah doesn't appear in the Torah itself, the Torah just says v'hi but I will create a makkah. Chazal call it the 10 makas. And the makkah is started. There's different opinions in the Medrash exactly how long each makkah was, but according to the opinion, the makkah lasted a week. The beginning of the first makkah of dam, of blood that happened in Egypt, was the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the beginning of Shvat. And therefore, every week, the first 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks until we get to Pesach is the 10 plagues, the 10 makkahs. So somehow Shvat, which also means a rod, a stick, a shevet, a stick, connected to the word makkah, which is also a stick. There are 2 types of sticks, but it's also connected to a stick, is somehow connected to the month of Shvat. Now, when we look in the Torah itself, where the Torah is describing what is the intention of the Makkas? So the Torah basically says that the intention of the Makkas is threefold: to know that Ani Hashem, to know that Hashem exists, which is Mitzias Hashem, to know Ashkachas Hashem, Ani Hashem B'Karev Aretz, I'm Hashem amongst the earth. That means that not only am I God, but I also care about man. There's Ashkacha. And then ultimately, the idea of Achtas Hashem, the unity of Hashem. In combining, there's no other God. In fact, there's nothing else besides Hashem, besides God. In the beginning of the parsha that we just came from, in the parsha, the Torah starts off, the pasuk starts off, and it says, "Vayidaber Elokim el Moshe, vayomer Elov Ani Hashem." Elokim speaks to Moshe, and Elokim tells Moshe, "Ani Hashem." Now, what does this pasuk mean? What does this verse mean? Elokim tells Moshe that I am Hashem. So, what is it? Who's speaking? Elokim is speaking. Elokim is saying that really I am Hashem. So there's different names of Hashem. There's different names to Hashem. There's a name that's connected to the world of nature, which is Elokim. Elokim, that's why Bereshis Bar Elokim. The name Elokim appears within the creation story. And the name Elokim only appears in the creation story 32 times in the first expression, until after the world, Shabbos was created, which now becomes Perek Aleph in Bereshis, the first chapter of Bereshis. The name Elokim only appears, and other names don't appear, because Elokim is connected to the natural world. Bereshis Bar Elokim. Therefore, the word Elokim has the same numeric values, 86, as the word Hateva, which is nature. Elokim is connected to nature. What is Ani Hashem, that I am Hashem? Ani Hashem is connected to the name of Hashem. What is Hashem? Hashem is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the letter, the name of Hashem is spelled as a Yud and Hey and above Hey, which is the name that represents infinity. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Haya Hoya V'Yeh, past, present, future, which means the name of transcendence, and it's also the name of revelation. That's the name that Hashem speaks to Klal Yisrael. The name of revelation is also connected to the name of Hashem. So Vayidaber Elokim el Moshe, vayomer Elov, Elokim speaks to Moshe and tells him that you should know that Ani Hashem. Ani Hashem has the same numeric value, +1, than the name Elokim. It's 87. So Vayidaber Elokim speaks to Moshe and says, you should know that Ani Hashem, that in fact Elokim, which you subscribe to the world of nature and the laws of the natural laws, you should know that that's really an expression of infinity. That when we see the world as a finite expression within the parameters of time, space, and consciousness, which is the world of a three-dimensional universe, which we see things in up, down, and right, left, and past and future, and everything is divided in its own time and space, you should know that the truth is, on a very deep level, the truth is that Ani Hashem, that the revealing of Elokim is really Kli Hashem. That the Kli, the vessel, which Kli is 60, plus Hashem, which is 26, the Kli of Hashem is Elokim. Elokim is really the Kli Hashem. It's the vessel that's containing the light of Hashem. This is what the Tachlis, this is what the ultimate intention of the idea of the Makkas were. What is the idea of the Makkas were? Casey, what was the idea of the Makkas? The Makkas is like a breaking open. It's like literally when you need to, let's say, open up a fruit that has a shell. You have to crack open the shell, the klipa, in order to reveal what's already present there all the time, which means that the breaking open of it does not actually create the fruit that you find within the shell. The breaking open just releases the fruit and reveals the fruit that's existing within the shell all the time. So the breaking open is revealing what is, not a creation. And that's the ultimate understanding of what the Makkas were. The intention of the Makkas were to reveal that when you subscribe to the world of nature, and you say this is the physical realm, and the physical realm is the world of nature, you should understand that on a deeper level, this is actually the world of the miraculous. That there is no nature, and nature, in fact, is an expression of infinity, and therefore it's a miraculous recreation of every single moment of this nature. And that's the higher intention. This is on a very high cosmic level, but the intention of the Makkas were. The intention of the Makkas were was to reveal that transcendence. That with the transcendence of the name of Hashem within the immediacy of the name of Elohim. So it's not to cancel or to sift out, but actually to reveal what's already present. And this is in terms of our own personal work. There's two ways how we can relate to the physical realm, the physical world in terms of our work, our spiritual work in this world. One is through the avodah, the work that's called avodah sabirurim. Avodah sabirurim means the practice of sifting out, of elevating. Birurim, what is the idea of birurim? Birurim means like a birur. Birur means that you're sifting one thing from the other. This is what the malacha, the prohibition on Shabbos is, that you're not allowed to be boyer, whatever, either way, when you're sifting one thing from the other, which means I'm saying that there's something positive here and there's something negative in this. There's two things in this bowl. There's the klipa, there's the shell, and there's the actual food. And I'm trying to separate these two. That's the idea of birur. So birur, the idea of avodas birurim, the elevation through that comes to birurim. Birurim means that I'm sifting out the positive quality within this situation, and I'm redeeming it through connecting and elevating that spark, that mitzvah, that spark that exists within that. That's the work generally during Choil, during the work week. That's also the work, that's also the spiritual work of somebody, absence of a wholeness, which therefore, in the terms of their work, the spiritual work, they're always trying to find the positive spark within that situation. Then there's a higher level, which is essentially the avodah that is done on Shabbos, the spiritual work that is done on Shabbos, in contrast to the work week, which on Shabbos there is no birurim, which means on Shabbos we don't do birurim. So what happens on Shabbos? The work that we do on Shabbos is the work of yichudim. Yichudim means unification. What is the idea of unification? This is the service. This is the divine service of a tzaddik in Shabbos. That yichudim means not that I'm sifting out one from the other and rejecting the psoilus, the extra, the things that are not needed, and elevating the sparks that are needed. Eating, for example, eating the food that I would like to eat, and then rejecting the other food that has to be expunged from my body, or even not even taking it into my body. But the avodah yichudim, the level of yichud means, and that's what the avodah of Shabbos is, the spiritual work on Shabbos is, to reveal what is already present here. And when you're revealing what's already present here, it's not it's not only that you're taking something from the everything and revealing it, you're revealing that the everything is part of everything. You're not taking the good from the bad and elevating only the spark of the goodness that exists within the situation, but you're actually transforming the entire situation to be seen for what it actually is. This is the avodah, this is really the service of a tzaddik. Since the Kol Yisrael, there's a level of amachun, so I think there's a level of tzaddik within us, which we said before, which brought down already in Kadmonim and the Rishonim and the Goinim, that the letter tzaddik is connected to all of Klal Yisrael, which means that Kol Yisrael Yesh Lem Chelek L'Olam Haba, in the level of Kol Yisrael, in the level of the Eilu She'ein Chelek L'Olam Haba, these are the ones that don't have the Olam Haba, which means that in the level of Kol Yisrael Yesh Lem Chelek L'Olam Haba, everyone has a portion of the world to come, which means on the level of everyone, of Kol Yisrael, on that level there's a nekuda, there's a point of a tzaddik, and therefore a soul comes down to this world, like the author of Tanya, is Tanya V'Seif Perek Gimel Dinin L'Mashbim Moisati Tzaddik. That the Chazal tell us that before the soul comes down to this world, there's an oath. Mashbim also comes from the word savua, which means not only is an oath, but it's also gains spiritual satisfaction. It's savua, and the savaya is that to hit tzaddik, that our aspiration has to be a tzaddik, to live like a tzaddik, which means it's to hit tzaddik. And if we can't, then at least we should aspire to be a tzaddik. Well, the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, that we would by trying, by opening ourselves up to be that level of tzaddik, we can actually achieve that on some madrega through ibur. But this is what the aspirations is. So again, in terms of birurim, what the idea of birurim means is birurim is connected to the concept of the breaking of the vessels, the shviras hakelim, that that before the creation, and before doesn't mean in time, but there's a conception of before creation, and in our own understanding of this, this will be the difference between an immature state or a childhood state and a mature state. So when a person is a child, they're in an immature state, and there's no moichin, there's no intelligence. Because there's no moichin, there's a lot of light. There's a lot of light means a lot of expression, and whatever the expression that you're feeling at that moment as a child, you're fully present in that expression. So let's say a child is feeling really sad, they feel really sad, and they can't see any possibility. You give the child a candy, or you give some type of sweets to the child, all of a sudden the child is very happy and forgets about their sadness. Because a child is very one-dimensional. Whatever they experience that they're experiencing, they experience fully. Because they live in the place of a lot of oil, a lot of light, and minimal amount of kalim, of vessels, which in this analogy would be the idea of moichin, of intelligence. When a person becomes mature, this means when a person becomes mature, he gains moichin, he or she gains moichin, the idea of intelligence. And intelligence says that even if you're feeling really sad, but there's something good things that are going on in your life, and even if you're feeling really good things in your life, you can recognize that there's other people that are sad. So it allows for the balancing of the attributes, the balancing of a person's midos, of a person's attributes. And the concept of toya was, which exists also within a human being, the same process in terms of his own evolution. The concept of toya is where there was such intense light that they clash with each other, which means like two children that are both fighting over a toy, and each one's their way, and they don't have enough moichin, they don't have enough intelligence to recognize that if they both share the toy, they would both gain. They don't have enough intelligence for that. So therefore, there is a breaking of the vessels. The breaking of the vessels caused a shattering of these lights, and then came the world of tikkun. What's the world of tikkun? The world of tikkun is the world of moichin, the world of intelligence, which means that a person is able to say, what could I find? What's the spark that I can find in this situation? So throughout the world, there's distributed different insights, different sparks. And when a person is in a certain place, or let's say a person has certain objects in their life, so there's a recognition that the reason why I have these objects in my life, or the reason why I'm in this place, let's say for example, a person is living in a certain country. So they understand, if they understand that what Chazal tells us, and Rabbi Psachim says that Hashem dispersed Klal Yisrael throughout the world, harvest on game to add converts, which spiritually this means to elevate sparks, which means when you're in a certain place, you have to ask yourself, what is this place? What is the positive quality of this place that I can excavate and learn in my own and transfer into my own spiritual service? So this can be in a very particular way, or even in a collective way. That when Klal Yisrael, for example, were in a certain land, a certain country, so the way Klal Yisrael, obviously not consciously, creates a tikkun for that state is to utilize the spiritual quality of that, the zeitgeist, or the quality of that place that gives rise to a particularity of that type of people, and to transfer that into a context of holiness, and to expand that, while you to Kodesh, to expand that also in a holy way. That's the idea of Bir HaNitzotzes. That's the elevation of sparks. But then there's a higher level, which is that not only am I elevating the spark, which means the spark of that, but I'm actually transforming the whole thing. And the way you transform something is by the recognition that the entirety of that can be transformed into something holiness. So you're not only taking the spark of it, the nitzitz, the spark of that thing, but you're doing like the service of Shabbos. And that's why Shabbos, Shvat, on one hand has the letter Shvat, which represents the idea of a rod, something that breaks open things, but it also has the letters of Shav, like Shabbos, the root of the word Shabbos, which is to rest, which is the higher work. What is the higher work? This is the idea of a tzaddik. What is a tzaddik? When the pasuk in Mishlei says, the Proverbs says that tzaddik oichel l'seiv nafshay, that a tzaddik eats and is satisfied, and better Mishayim, and the opposite of a tzaddik eats and is never satisfied. So the Zohar said it doesn't only mean that a tzaddik eats in a mindful way, therefore he's always satisfied, she's always satisfied, or they don't overeat, etc. But the depth of what that means is that tzaddik eats for the satisfaction of his heart, means that tzaddik eats from a place of satisfaction, which means that he relates to life from a place, he, she, doesn't matter. The tzaddik relates to life from a place where he's already whole. In other words, most times we relate to life from a place of chesed, a place of absence. And therefore, we need to fill our life with things or with food that are going to give us sustenance, that are going to complete us. So if only I had this object or that object, and only if I ate this food or that food, then I'll be satiated. The definition of a tzaddik is someone that lives from a place of a tzaddik, someone that lives a place of wholeness, someone that lives from a place already of satisfaction. And therefore, because you're living from a place of satisfaction, the only reason why you would ever want something outside of yourself is to create some type of elevation. That the intention of the eating changes, as opposed to eating just to satisfy yourself, because there's a place that's empty and you need to complete it. I'm already complete, and I recognize that in order for me, in very practical terms, in order for me to live, to survive, I need to eat, so I eat. But the impetus to eat comes from a place of satisfaction, and that's the idea of living from that space of perfect timing, of perfect pleasure. The perfect pleasure is the place where everything's pleasurable, because you're living from the place where you're already satisfied. Because in the sequence of the months, we have Teves, Shvat, then Adar, which are these later 3 months of the winter, and they also related to, first in Teves, they're related to the relationships that we have, the physical relationships that we have to people, to others. Then there's the relationship in Shvat that we have not only to other people, but to the objects in our life. And this same 2 paradigms could be the same 2 ways that we relate to the objects in our life. There's one way to relate to the objects in our life. Well, I guess it'll be 3 ways. The first way is objects in our life is just that they're objects in our life. Okay, I just have them, and I use them, and I've used them, etc. And I move on. And that's could be with food or any other object that I'm taking into myself, into my orbit, into my life. The higher way of understanding this is that these are sparks of soul that are connected to me. That the reason why I am attracted to these particular objects, and the reason why these objects are part of my life, and the reason why I own these objects, and whether it's the food that I eat or the car that I drive, whatever the objects are, the reason for that is because these are relatable sparks to my soul. And I have to release the positive quality, the toiv, the quality of the goodness of that spark, and reach an elevation. That's a deeper way of living. So I'm living from a place that where I said, that I think that I'm hungry. I think that I'm hungry because I just missing something, nutrients in my body. But the truth is that the depth of why I'm feeling this hunger is because I'm missing something spiritually in my life. And when I feel the spiritual need, also the physical need will be supplemented will be fulfilled as well. That's a deeper understanding. And the highest understanding, which is even higher than the level of Bir Mitzaitzis, which is a yichud, higher level of elevation of sparks, which is the idea of the yichud, is the recognition that not only are these things sparks that are connected to my soul, but like the Baal Shem Tov says, these are expressions of your soul. They're part of you. Because most time when we look at things in our lives, or let's just talk about situations in our life, we say to ourselves, when something happens to us, we say, why did this happen to me? Or why do I own this object? And then when it's lost, why did I lose this object? And certainly when it comes to events, like why did this happen to me? Why did the other thing not happen to me? And the truth is nothing is actually happening to you. Everything is part of you. So the objects and the conditioning, the context that's being created throughout your life is not something that's happening to you, but it's an extension of you. You don't ask yourself, why do I have this hand or why do I have these feet? You are your hands, you are your feet. And that's the same thing that should extend to every single aspect of your life. That's the higher level of yichudim, which are the recognition it's not just that they are connected to me, and therefore I have to ask the question, why did this happen to me, or why do I have this thing? It's actually part of me. And as part of me, I have to think about how could I possibly do this in the most holy and wholesome way to connect with this and to reveal the presence of Hashem, the presence of the divine in every single aspect of my life. Just like my life has to be a Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of Hashem's name, that my life represents my Elohim, my nature represents Hashem. Ani Hashem represents the infinite one. So much so that we can say that Shema Yisrael, Hashem, the infinite one, is actually Elokeinu, is my God. And I am expressing it, this truth, in the way I live, in the way I act, the way I interact with other people. I'm a living example of revealing Hashem, the infinite presence in my life. The same thing I have to ask myself the question, how do I do that with everything in my life? How can I expand, while you to Rasi Kodesh, how can I expand this consciousness into every single object and subject, every single relationship, and every single experience that I have in my life? How could I elevate that to that same level of consciousness? How can I be doila? How can I elevate it, to lift it, so that I can transform it, that it can all be an expression of the ultimate one, of the Creator? And that's the higher level of what we're trying to achieve during the month of Shevat. And now we'll take a few questions. I don't know where Shlomo is, but we'll take some questions.
So if anyone has any